we've finished the major part of pruning on the fruit trees, and with a lot of the tropical fruit trees you get the sap that they exude, and it builds up on your pruners. So on these hand pruners here, see, it just builds up. So once the major part of the pruning is done, I will start to clean these off. First of all, by cutting off the worst of the sap. Then this is just petrol. Basically, you need something pretty strong to dissolve what's left of the sap, clean everything up, resharpen everything. I don't know if you can see here, but maybe show you once I've disassembled it. There's a little notch there that's causing a problem, doesn't do a clean cut. That is because of just catching the trellis wire. It will actually cut through the high tensile wire if you're not careful, which is quite dangerous because that then springs and hit you in the face. So the first job is to disassemble this, which they very kindly provide us. Oh my god, I've lost it. They provide us with a tool that does that, which I put down somewhere. I'll have to cut that out, otherwise Angela will be like, hey, you put things down and you never know where you put them. So yeah, you get this little tool which comes with the pruners. This side is for tightening this nut up, and this is already actually torqued. So once you've got it tight enough, it just clicks like that. The other end, you have this Allen key that fits in there, and then flip this over, and you've got a Phillips screwdriver for disassembling here. So let's start to take this apart. Never do this when it's connected to the battery for obvious reasons. Come on. Don't use petrol on the plastic body of the pruners. I've got a different dissolvent that I use for that. So 3 screws here. There's 2 long ones from there and a short one from the back here. Then just riddle that off. That comes off nicely. Flip this little tool over to the Allen key. That goes in there. Undo screw there. And then this will come off. Come on. And then inside here is just some bearings, roller bearings, needle bearings that we call them. So clean that off, get as much of the grease off there, and then put it back together with clean grease. So this here comes off, and then it's a matter of, see the build up there. But this gets done fairly regular because the tropical fruit trees are almost continuously growing. So clean this up and you could pretty much say in about 6 to 8 weeks time I'll be pruning again, especially if you're trellising the trees That's probably another video to go into in depth, but you've got to strike that light interception balance. So if you let the trees get too much foliage, then the lower branches will die off. But you can't over prune, because then, because of an evergreen, because of the intensity of the sun closer to the equator, if you over prune, and that just leads direct sunlight onto the bare branches because they've cut all the foliage off, which then leads to cracking of the bark, which then leads to disease. So you've got to continually prune. That's kind of it's one of the drawbacks, because it's a big labour cost. Whereas growing them sort of either vase shape, or say like rambutan, if you had them freestanding or growing it naturally but with a single post, you could go along with machinery and prune, which is more effective, quicker, and less labour costs. So clean these up, then we move on to the petrol side of things. And when all this is all cleaned off and put back together again, I'll spray these with oil. It can be vegetable oil, cheap vegetable oil. Just to stop rust from developing, because the sap it's good in some ways that it coats the metal and stops rust, which you get a lot on this type of pruner. But yeah, a bit of a pain in the butt that it builds up, especially on these pruners, because I'll try and show you here. This little red thing here has a hole in the middle, there you can see that, and that's where you use a spray can, aerosol spray can, put it up against there, squirt, and that pushes grease through this shaft here and into the bearings. So you've got to keep it clean for that reason. You can't let it build up too much, otherwise it'll block that channel. So I'll just carry on focusing on cleaning these battery pruners, and the hand pruners, it's the same process really. Scrape off the excess, clean off any residual, go through them, give them a good sharpening. I've got a flat sharpener here, so it'll be put a nice angle on here, clean up the burr, take out as much as I can of this little notch here, clean these up, sharpen these, and then just oil everything up and be there for next time. With the battery pruners, you can get replacement parts for these cutters. So it isn't that if you've got a nick in like that they're just no good as a set of pruners. You can replace this. Not sure of what the expense is, probably, well no, I'd be guessing, but probably $70, something like that. But when you consider, I would say these battery pruners, it's almost the equivalent of having 2 people, because it just speeds everything up so much. Really does make a vast difference. Alright, so I'll sharpen these up, go through cleaning this, and then I'll show you the reassembly and how the aerosol grease works. Okay, that's the cleaning up done. I mean, there'll always be marks, but yeah, all that built up sap has gone. I've managed to, using a stronger file, I've managed to get rid of that, the most of that little nick. Now it's just a matter of putting an edge on here. And take the burr off from this side. Yeah, happy with that. So then it's put it all back together. There we go. That's that. A couple of little notches here that go inside of there, he says. Where are we? Oh, that's it. No. You stupid boy Pike. Screws, 2 long ones there, and then a short one. Great having this tool because you actually use it quite regular in the sense of you using this other end, the torque end, just to check that it's tensioned up enough. Get this on. This end needs a bit of a clean up. Ooh. Yeah, do it on a nice concrete floor, don't do it on the grass where you might never see the darn thing again. Get the excess grease, old grease out of here. Then put that on there, and then listen for the click. That's it, tensioned enough. Pop the screw back in here. All this has been cleaned, so swap that around for the Allen key. Job done. And then just spray the grease in the other end. So this is Infoco's Electrocoupe, which, as you can see here, is a French company. And this is the aerosol grease. And then what I was showing you before, hope the light's good enough. You have a tiny, tiny little hole there. That's where you spray, and it goes right the way through, and you'll actually see it ooze out here on this side. So giving it a good shake, pop it on there, and then see, just pushes out of here on this side. So you know it's all gone through. And ideally, I like to, I think they recommend you give it a little spray every morning before you go out. So that's them. Now I'm just kind of going to go through the same thing here, scrape all the sap off these blades, clean it up with the petrol, sharpen them, and then spray. I'll spray these with oil because these do rust if you're not careful. If you haven't used them for a while, everything rusts in the tropics, the humidity and such like. So get these cleaned up. So I know this isn't necessarily an ideal follow on, it's just that I'm up at this shed and I wanted to show, I suppose, what we would, I'd call it a tool really. It's what we use or try to use as much as possible, and it's called a moon calendar. And this is the website for them, www.moongardeningcalendar.com, and we got this for helping initially with grafting, because there is a time of the year that there's good sap flow in the trees, and that's a good period for grafting. Here we go, you'll see here 11 days of prolific growth. Divide, says at the bottom there, divide, repot house plants, sowing seeds. And then at the opposite end here is not so good time. So it will advise when is a good time for planting above ground crops or below ground crops, when it's good for taking cuttings, grafts, and a good time for fertilizing, a good time for pruning. Probably the one thing that we struggle with, as you can imagine, I think it only talks about a couple of days that's good for pruning, and as you can imagine, it takes more than a couple of days to get the pruning done. And you'll see there's a red mark, a red section there, and basically you line that up with when there's a full moon. So when we buy a calendar every year, we always buy one that indicates the moon phases, the waning, the waxing, full moon, new moon. So you line the red section up, and let's say, for instance, if the full moon happened to be on the 5th, you set the red section with the 5th, and that then indicates when various things should be done, such as grafting, fertilizing. And yeah, we stick with that in terms of the fertilizing, and the grafting we stick quite religiously with that. Pruning, yeah, it is difficult. We can't just prune for 2 days and then wait a month to do the next lot of pruning, because then the flowering and the fruit set would all be out of sync. So yeah, we have to get on with that regardless. But certainly it's a good little tool, and has really, really proved itself in terms of the grafting. Like I say, we stick to it quite religiously in terms of the grafting, and yeah, made a vast difference. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, it tells you when would be a good time for planting bulbs, underground stuff. How accurate the rest of it is, I honestly don't know. We haven't done enough, but in terms of certainly the grafting makes a massive difference. Talking about companion planting as well, if that's what you're into. Okay then, I'm have to get some more work done. It's pretty overcast, but at least it isn't raining at the moment. So I'll get out in the paddock now that everything's cleaned up and find some more jobs. Alright then, bye bye for now.